In the upcoming video clip, John Mearsheimer argues the main reason why Russia attacked Ukraine was due to NATO expansion. Let's get right to the video, and following the video hear the arguments to Mearsheimer's position.
I don't view myself as Putin's puppet. I can guarantee you the United States will go ballistic. I believe that the principal cause of the Ukraine war is NATO expansion. To put it in more general terms, the West was determined to make Ukraine a Western bulwark on Russia's border. You want to remember that the United States decides in the mid-1990s to expand NATO eastward, despite the fact that the United States had promised Gorbachev that there would be no NATO expansion. And then in January 2021, President Biden moves into the White House. Remember, he's elected in November 2000. He moves into the White House in January 2021. Biden has a long-standing reputation as a Ukraine hawk. And it's no accident that a year and a month, 13 months after Biden moves into the White House, the war breaks out. In fact, on December 17th, 2021, remember the war breaks out February 24th, 2022. 2 months before that, December 17th, 2021, Putin writes a letter to Jens Stoltenberg, who's the head of NATO, and a letter to Joe Biden, proposing a possible solution to putting an end to this crisis and preventing a major war. What does the United States do? The United States basically tells Biden, the United States basically tells Putin that it has no interest in working out some sort of diplomatic arrangement. If you go back and look at the diplomacy at the time, it's quite remarkable how little interest the United States had in solving the problem diplomatically. And it's because we thought we could push NATO expansion down the Russians' throat, and if that did not work and a war broke out, we thought we could defeat the Russians. I don't view myself as Putin's puppet. I'm not interested in defending Putin. What I've always been interested in are the facts and logic. And if you look at the facts and logic, what you see is that Putin's explanation for what caused this war is correct. This is the argument that Ukraine is a sovereign state and it has the so-called right to join the alliance. It has the right to choose its own foreign policy. The problem with that argument is the Russians don't agree, because the Russians care about their own security. And if you're a smaller country and you live next door to a great power, you have to be very careful in terms of choosing your foreign policy. Do you think any country in the Western Hemisphere has the right to choose its own foreign policy, even if the United States doesn't like what it's doing? Do you think that we thought that Cuba had the right to invite the Soviet Union to put missiles in Cuba in 1962? If Mexico or Canada 10 years from now decide that they want to invite China to build a military base on their territory, do you think the United States is going to say, no problem, we don't care whether China builds a military base in Mexico or Canada? I can guarantee you the United States will go ballistic if China tries to move military forces into the Western Hemisphere. The United States has a Monroe Doctrine, which says that the Western Hemisphere is our backyard. Well, the same basic logic applies to the Russians. The Russians are a great power. The Russians had no interest in conquering Ukraine before 2014, when the crisis first broke out, February 2014. The Russians had no interest in conquering Ukraine. Michael McFaul, who was the American ambassador to Moscow at the time, and is a major league critic of Putin, has said publicly that the Russians had no interest in conquering Ukraine, conquering Crimea before 2014.
Critics argue that while NATO expansion may have been a factor, it does not fully explain Russia's actions. They contend that Mearsheimer's argument overlooks other significant factors such as Russia's historical ties with Ukraine, its desire to maintain influence in the region, and domestic political considerations. Mearsheimer's argument tends to downplay the agency of Ukraine and its people. Critics argue that it oversimplifies the situation by portraying Ukraine solely as a pawn in geopolitical struggle between Russia and the West, disregarding the aspirations of Ukrainians for independence, democracy, and closer ties with Europe. Critics assert that Mearsheimer's argument fails to acknowledge Russia's broader revisionist agenda, which seeks to challenge the post-Cold War international order and assert Russian dominance in its perceived sphere of influence. This includes not only Ukraine but also other former Soviet republics and Eastern European countries. Critics argue that Mearsheimer's analysis selectively interprets historical events to fit his argument, neglecting other key developments such as Russia's support for authoritarian regimes in the region, its use of hybrid warfare tactics, and its violations of Ukraine's sovereignty. Some critics also point out the normative dimension of the conflict, emphasizing the importance of upholding international law, sovereignty, and the right of nations to choose their own alliances without external coercion. Well, I hope you liked the video and give the channel a subscribe. I would like to hear your thoughts in the comments section on the arguments. If you wish, you can join the channel as a member, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, check out my other channel, Progressive Movement, link is on the homepage and in the comments section, thank you. Now, take care and bye-bye.